Nice to know, Issa Lushata, you're back with us. Okay, so let's get your conversation on. Then we've got one more question for you before we call it a wrap on that discourse. So go ahead, Issa. All right, my producer says Ali Shatta is offline. So let's go quickly to Dr. Sally Moses. Good morning, Dr. Sally Moses.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right.
Good morning.
All right, let's look at the merger. Professor Babagana Zulum of Borno State has called on the federal government not to implement the merger of the NDA and the Nigerian Army University in Borno State, saying that it would not help the people of the Northeast because they needed more, tertiary institutions there to counter the narrative of the Boko Haram, who is against the Western education. And also urging that probably the Ministry of Education should take over the school if they don't want it to be an army university, to make it a conventional university. Do you think Babagana Zulum has a case for what he's asking from the federal government?
Thank you very much. I think the question you are asking is an important question, and considering the decision of the Federal Executive Council to implement the Orosaye'S report on civil service reform, you agree with me over the years that, if you look at our national budget year in you see that the recurrent, which is the overhead, it's always higher than the capital. And where does the recurrent go? It goes into salaries, allowances, and other emoluments. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that the decision taken by the Federal Executive Council to implement the Orosaye'S report is a deliberate decision to cut down the cost of governance, especially the overhead for the national budget. Because over the years, you agree with me that the recurrent, which is the one that takes care of the overhead of the cost of governance, is always higher than the capital budget. The capital budget is what develops the country, what develops the society. But the overhead goes into salaries and allowances and all kinds of emoluments. If you have that kind of situation, you are not likely to make any meaningful progress in terms of development. Going back to your question concerning the Nigerian Army University in Bill, if you look at the philosophy, the idea behind the establishment of that university and the NDA, they are two different things. If you want to look at it,
What's the difference? What's the difference in the two?
NDA, yes. NDA
What's the difference in the two institutions?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to explain. Okay. The NDA is a specialized institution that is dedicated for giving military training to cadets. Like in the US, we have West Point. In the UK, we have Sandhurst. So it's the same thing with what we have in NDA. So it's for a specialized training for cadets that where after graduation, they go into the services either in the Army, Navy, or Air Force. But when you look at the university, it's not like that, because the university runs a conventional program whereby where you take your degree, you go and look for your job, or where you are interested in working, you go and look for a job and start to use it different things. But I understand why the government is trying to think that way. They are trying to see how they can cut down cost of government. But the governor of Borno State is making a suggestion that instead of merging them with the NDA, they can allow the state to take over the university and begin to run it like a conventional university. Well, if the government decides to take that decision by allowing the state government to take over, it will remove the burden of funding that university from the federal government. But if you look at it the other way, you know that government had already made some investment there in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other facilities that requires the takeoff of an investment. Government had already made such investment. So what happened? Is a is Zulum willing to pay the federal government the investment that they had made there, willing to pay them back so that they can take over? So all these things have to come to the table. If the governor is willing to say, okay, well, let's quantify the investment that you have made, we'll pay you so that the state government, Borno state government, can run the university as one of the state universities, then that could be discussed. But it's not just say handing it over to us after government has made substantial investment. I don't think that's the way to go, in my own opinion.
Okay, let's look at from the other perspective in terms of the cutting down of cost. Is there any other way around what the governor has said in terms of still having these two institutions? You talked about the state governments taking over the running of the university. How feasible is that, knowing fully well that there are two different entities in terms of ownership?
Yes, if the state government is given the privilege to take over that university, definitely it's going to affect the change of name. It's going to change from Army University to whatever it is, maybe Borno State University or whatever they want to call it. Definitely it's going to change. But for the uniqueness of the university has to do with the name that it carries and the philosophy of the university. So I don't see Borno State government keeping that philosophy and that name if eventually they have their way. But there is a way out if the government is interested and is bent on merging them with NDA. If government is bent on merging them, if government is bent on merging them with NDA, what it means is that that university could be considered as a postgraduate school, In other words, they'll be fully dedicated to postgraduate study, as then been known as the postgraduate school of NDA. Then we can keep that, then the government can be funding that. But if they are allowed to run undergraduate program, I don't know how they're going to relate that with those who are running cadet program at NDA because it's also undergraduate and they are receiving specialized training, you know, and all that. What those who will be doing the program in view, they may not have that opportunity to do that kind of specialized training because they are not recruited for that. They are admitted to come and run an academic program. But those ones there, they receive specialized military training. So I don't know what the government is thinking in that direction. But if the government is insisting that it must be merged with NDA, they could consider the university as a postgraduate school for NDA. So every other postgraduate program they are running in Kaduna, they can now move them to view and make that place completely a postgraduate school of NDA. I think that could be considered. You know, that's one of the things that you can think about.
To the next talking point, which has to do with the Chad mutiny attack that went down yesterday. Looking at what played out yesterday, would you say it's a courtesy of the recent lifting of ban by ECOWAS on Mali, Niger that has led to the gunmen and military mutiny that took place in Chad yesterday?
You can't conclude that. If you look at what happened, the prominent opposition leader in Chad was killed. You know, the prominent opposition leader in that country was killed in that violence. So you can see that there is a political dimension to what happened. They are preparing towards an election, and when they are preparing towards a major election, there are many things come. The guy that is there, 16 there, is a very young guy who took over from his father after his father was killed. And are you sure he's willing to just hand over power and just go home? These are some of the factors that we should be looking at. The death of the opposition leader is not an accidental. If you look at it very well, the manner which was you should know that it was well rehearsed and premeditated. So it's not something to just wish away and think that it's political. That is why, the last time when we were discussing about the state of coups in some region in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, I told you that those guys are thinking of how they can perpetrate themselves in office. And one of the ways they do that is that every form
of a major opposition figure figure in Chad Republic, and the fears are saying that this might grow further escalate into further crisis of Chad Republic, and also probably lead to another military coup d'etat already in Chad Republic. Hopefully, if we get his, let's see if we can get him, but let's go for a quick break. When we return, we'll be wrapping up Global Morning.